On the magnetic bodies, and on that great magnet, the Earth, by William Gilbert. Book 1, Chapter 4. Which pole is the North? How the North Pole is distinguished from the South Pole. One of the Earth's poles is turned toward Sinosura and steadily regards a fixed point in the heavens, save that it is unmoved by the precession of the fixed stars and longitude, which movement we recognize in the Earth, as we shall later show. The other pole is turned toward the opposite aspect of the heavens, an aspect unknown to the ancients, but which is adorned with a multitude of stars, and is itself a striking spectacle for those who make long voyages. So too the Lodestone possesses the virtue and power of directing itself toward the north and the south, the earth itself cooperating in giving to it that power, according to the conformation of nature, which adjusts the movements of the stone to its true locations. In this manner it is demonstrated. Put the magnetic stone, after you have found the poles, in a rounded wooden vessel, a bowl or a dish. Then put the vessel holding the magnet, like a boat with a sailor in it, in a tube of water or a cistern, where it may float freely in the middle without touching the rim, and where the air is not stirred by winds, currents, which might interfere with the natural movement of the stone. There the stone, as if in a boat floating in the middle of an unruffled surface of still water, will straightway set itself and the vessel containing it in motion, and will turn in a circle till its south pole shall face north, and its north pole south. For from a contrary position it returns to the poles, and though with its first too strong impetus it passes beyond. Still, as it comes back again, at last it rests at the poles or in the meridian, save that, according to the place, it diverges a very little from these points, or from the meridional line, the cause of which we will define later. As often as you move it out of its place, so often, by reason of the extraordinary power with which nature has endowed it, does it seek again its fixed and determinate points. Nor does this occur only when the poles of the lodestone in the float are made to lie evenly in the plane of the horizon. It takes place also even though one pole, whether north or south, be raised or depressed 10, 20, 30, 40, or 80 degrees from the plane of the horizon. You shall see the north part of the stone seek the south, and the south part the north, so that if the pole of the stone be but 1 degree from the zenith and the center of the heavens, the whole stone revolves until the pole finds its own place. And though the pole does not point exactly to its seat, yet it will incline toward it, and will come to rest in the meridian of its true direction. And it moves with the same impetus, whether the North Pole be directed toward the upper heavens, or whether the South Pole be raised above the horizon. Yet it must always be borne in mind that though there are manifold differences between stones, and one far surpasses another in virtue and efficacy, still all lodestones have the same limits and turn to the same points. Further, it is to be remembered that all who hitherto have written about the poles of the lodestone, and instrument makers and navigators, are egregiously mistaken in taking for the north pole of the lodestone the part of the stone that inclines to the north, and for the south pole the part that looks to the south. This we will hereafter prove to be an error. So ill cultivated is the whole philosophy of the magnet still, even as regards its elementary principles. As above, so below, but inversely. Book 1, Chapter 5. One lodestone appears to attract another in the natural position, but in the opposite position repels it and brings it to rights. First, we have to describe in popular language the potent and familiar properties of the stone. Afterward, very many subtile properties as yet recondite and unknown, being involved in obscurities, are to be unfolded, and the causes of all these, nature's secrets being unlocked, are in their place to be demonstrated in fitting words and with the aid of apparatus. The fact is trite and familiar, that the lodestone attracts iron in the same way, too, one lodestone attracts another. Take the stone on which you have designated the poles, north and south, and put it in its vessel so that it may float. Let the poles lie just in the plane of the horizon, or at least in a plane not very oblique to it. Take in your hand another stone, the poles of which are also known, and hold it so that its south pole shall lie toward the north pole of the floating stone, and near it alongside. The floating lodestone will straightway follow the other, provided it be within the range of dominion of its powers. Nor does it cease to move, nor does it quit the other, till it clings to it, unless, by moving your hand away, you manage skillfully to prevent the conjunction. In like manner, if you oppose the north pole of the stone in your hand to the south pole of the floating one, they come together and follow each other. For opposite poles attract opposite poles. But now, if in the same way you present north to north, or south to south, one stone repels the other, and as though a helmsman were bearing on the rudder, it is off like a vessel, making all sail, nor stands nor stays as long as the other stone pursues. One stone also will range the other, turn the other around, bring it to right about, and make it come to agreement with itself. But when the two come together and are conjoined in nature's order, they cohere firmly. For example, if you present the north pole of the stone in your hand to the Tropic of Capricorn, for so we may distinguish with mathematical circles the round stone or terrella, just as we do the globe itself, or to any point between the equator and the south pole, immediately the floating stone turns round, and so places itself that its south pole touches the north pole of the other and is most closely joined to it. In the same way, you will get the effect at the other side of the equator by presenting pole to pole. And thus by art and contrivance we exhibit attraction and repulsion, and motion in a circle toward the concordant position, and the same movements to avoid hostile meetings. Furthermore, in one same stone we are thus able to demonstrate all this, but also we are able to show how the selfsame part of one stone may by division become either north or south. Take the oblong stone, in which A is the north pole and D the south. Take the oblong stone AD, in which A, alpha, is the north pole and D, delta, the south. Cut the stone in 2 equal parts and put together alpha in a vessel and let it float in water. You will find that alpha, the north point, will turn to the south as before. And in like manner, the point D, delta, will move to the north in the divided stone as before division. But beta, or B and C, before connected, now separated from each other, are not what they were before. B is now south, while C is north. B attracts C, longing for union and for restoration of the original continuity. They are 2 stones made out of one, and on that account the C of one turning toward the B of the other, they are mutually attracted, and being freed from all impediments and from their own weight, borne as they are on the surface of the water, they come together and into conjunction. But if you bring the part of point alpha up to C of the other, they repel one another and turn away. For by such a position of the parts, nature is crossed and the form of the stone is perverted. But nature observes strictly the laws it has imposed upon bodies. Hence the flight of one part from the undue position of the other, and hence the discord unless everything is arranged exactly according to nature. And nature will not suffer an unjust and inequitable peace, or an unjust and inequitable peace and agreement, but makes war and employs force to make bodies acquiesce fairly and justly. Hence, when rightly arranged, the parts attract each other. In essence, both stones, the weaker and the stronger, come together and with all their might tend to union. A fact manifest in all lodestones, and not, as Pliny supposed, only in those from Ethiopia. The Ethiopic stones, if strong, and those brought from China, which are all-powerful stones, show the effect more quickly and most plainly, attract with most force in parts nighest the pole, and keep turning till pole looks straight on pole. The pole of a stone has strongest attraction for that part of another stone which answers to it, the adverse, as it is called. Ergo, the north pole of one has strongest attraction for, has the most vigorous pull on, the south part of another. So too it attracts iron more powerfully, and iron clings to it more firmly, whether previously magnetized or not. Thus it has been settled by nature not without reason, that the parts nigher the pole shall have the greatest attractive force, and that in the pole itself shall be the seat, the throne, as it were, of a high and splendid power, and that magnetic bodies brought near thereto shall be attracted most powerfully, and relinquished with most reluctance. So, too, the poles are readiest to spurn and drive away what is presented to them amiss, and what is inconformable and foreign. Book 1, Chapter 6. The lodestone attracts iron ore as well as the smelted metal. The most potent virtue of the lodestone, and the one valued by the ancients, is the attraction for iron. For Plato mentions that the magnet, so called by Euripides, draws to itself iron, and not only attracts iron rings, but also endowed them with the power of doing as the stone itself, to wit, of attracting other rings, and that thus sometimes a long chain of iron objects, as nails or rings, is made, the several parts hanging from one another, the best iron, such as that which from its uses is called Acies, or Acies, Acies, and from the country of Chalybes, is most readily and strongly attracted by a good magnet. But inferior iron, iron that is impure, rusty, not well purged of dross, and not worked over in the second furnace, is attracted more weakly. And any iron is most fatally attracted if covered and smeared with thick, greasy, tenacious fluids. The lodestone also attracts iron ores, rich ores, and those of the color of iron. Poor ores, and those without much pure metal, it does not attract unless they receive special treatment. The lodestone loses some part of its attractive power, and, as it were, enters on the decline of old age, if it be too long exposed in open air and not kept in a case with a covering of iron filings or iron scales. Hence it must be packed in such material. Nothing withstands this unimpairable virtue, except what destroys the form of the body or corrodes it. No, not 1,000 adamants made into one, nor do I believe in the Diomedes, or that it has a power the opposite of the lodestones, albeit Pliny, that eminent author and best of compilers, for he has handed down to posterity the observation and discoveries of others, and not always or mainly his own. Copies out of other writers the Diomedes fable, now from repetition become a familiar story among the moderns. The story is that in India are two mountains near the river Indus, and that one of them, consisting of lodestone, possesses the power of holding everything containing iron, while the other, consisting of Diomedes, repels the same. Hence, if you should have iron nails in the soles of your shoes, it would be impossible to lift your foot if you were standing on one of the mountains, and impossible to stand on the other at all. Albertus Magnus writes that in his time a lodestone was found that on one side drew iron to itself, and that on the other side repelled it. But Albertus's observation was faulty, For every lodestone attracts on one side magnetized iron, and on the other repels, and attracts magnetized iron more powerfully than non-magnetized. Chapter 7. What iron is, what its matter, its use. Having declared the origin and nature of the lodestone, we hold it needful first to give the history of iron also, and to point out properties of iron as yet not known. But we come to the explication of difficulties connected with the lodestone. And to the demonstrations, before we come to the consideration of its uniting and according with iron. Iron is by all classed among metals. It is of bluish color, very hard, grows red hot before fusion, is very hard to fuse, spreads under the hammer, and is resonant. Chemists say that if fixed earthly sulfur be combined with fixed earthly mercury, and these two bodies present not a pure white but a bluish white color, if the sulfur prevail, iron results. For those hard masters of the metals, who in many various processes put them to the torture by crushing, calcining, smelting, subliming, precipitating, distinguish this as more truly the child of earth than any other metal. For neither gold, nor silver, nor lead, nor tin, nor even copper do they hold to be so earthy. And therefore it is treated only in the hottest furnaces with the help of bellows, and when thus smelted, if it becomes hard again, it cannot be smelted once more without great labor, and its lags can be fused only with the utmost difficulty. It is the hardest of metals, subduing and breaking them all, because of the strong concentration of the more earthy substance. Hence we shall better understand what iron is when we shall have developed in a way different from that of those who have gone before us, what are the causes and matter of metals. Aristotle supposes their matter to be an exaltation, or exhalation. Aristotle supposes their matter to be an exhalation. The chemists in chorus unison declare that sulfur and quicksilver are the prime elements. Gilgil, the Mauritian, or Mauritanian, Gilgil, the Mauritanian, holds the prime element to be ash moistened with water. Georgius Agricola, a mixture of water with earth, and his opinion differs not from Gilgil's thesis. But our opinion is that metals have their origin and do effloresce in the uppermost part of the globe, each distant by its form, as do many other minerals in all the bodies around us. The globe of the earth is not made of ash or of inert dust, nor is fresh water an element, but only a less complex consistence of the earth's evaporated fluids. Unctuous bodies, pinguia corpora, fresh water void of properties, quicksilver, sulfur. These are not the principles of the metals. They are results of another natural process, nor have they a place now, or have they had ever, in the process of producing metals. The earth gives forth sundry humors, not produced from water, nor from dry earth, nor from mixtures of these, but from the matter of the earth itself. These are not distinguished by opposite qualities or substances, nor is the earth a simple substance, as the Peripatetics imagine. The humours come from sublimed vapours that have their origin in the bowels of the earth, and all waters are extractions from the earth and exudations, as it were. Therefore, Aristotle is partly in the right when he says that the exhalation which condenses in the earth's veins is the prime matter of metals. For exhalations are condensed in situations less warm than the place of their origin, and owing to the structure of lands and mountains, they are in due time condensed, as it were, in wombs, and changed into metals. But they do not of themselves alone constitute the veins of ore, only they flow into and coalesce with soldier matter, and form metals. When therefore the concentrated matter has settled in more temperate cavities, in these moderately warm spaces it takes shape, just as in the warm uterus the seed of the embryo grows. Sometimes the exhalation coalesces only with matter homogeneous throughout, and hence some metals are now and then, but not often, obtained pure and not needing to be smelted. But other exhalations, being mixed with foreign earths, must be smelted, and thus are treated the ores of all metals, which are freed from all their dross by the action of fire. When smelted into the metallic state, they are fluid, and then are freed from earthly impurities, but not from the true substance of the earth. But that there is gold, or silver, or copper, or that any other metal exists, does not happen from any quantitas or proportion of matter, nor by any specific virtues of matter, as the chemists fondly imagine. But it happens when, earth cavities and the conformation of the ground concurring with the fit matter, those metals take from universal nature the forms by which they are perfected, just as in the case of all other minerals, all plants and animals. Else the kinds of metals would be vague and undefined. In fact, the varieties are very few, hardly 10 in number. But why nature should be so grudging in the number of metals, or why there should be even so many metals as are recognized by men, were not easy to explain. Those simpletons and raving astrologers refer to the several planets their respective metals, but neither do the planets agree with the metals nor the metals with the planets, either in number or in properties. For what is common between Mars and iron, save that, like many other implements, swords and artillery are made of iron? What has copper to do with Venus? Or how does tin or zinc relate to Jupiter? These were better dedicated to Venus, but a truce to old wives' talk. These exhalations are the remote cause of the generation of metals. The proximate cause is the fluid from the exhalations, like the blood and the semen in the generation of animals. But these exhalations and the fluids produced from them enter bodies often and change them into marcasites, and they pass into veins. We find many instances of timber so transformed into appropriate matrices within bodies. And these metals are formed, often as they enter the more interior and more homogeneous matter of the globe, and in time there results a vein of iron, or lodestone is produced, which is nothing but a noble iron ore. And for this reason, and also on account of its matter being quite peculiar and distant from that of all other metals. Nature very seldom or never mingles with iron any other metal, though the other metals are very often commingled in some small portion, and are produced together. Now when these exhalations or fluids happen to meet, efflorescences altered from the homogeneous matter of the globe, sundry precipitates and salts, in suitable matrices, operant forms, the other metals are produced, a specificating nature operating in that place. For within the globe are hidden the principles of metals and stones, as at the earth's surface are hidden the principles of herbs and plants. An earth dug from the bottom of a deep pit, where there appears to be no chance of any seed being formed, produces, if strewn on the top of a very high tower, green herbage and unbidden grasses, the sun and the sky brooding over earth. The earth regions produce those things which in each are spontaneous. Each region produces its own peculiar herbs and plants, its own metals. Do you not see how Tmolus sends fragrant saffron, India its ivory, the Sabians their frankincense, the naked Sibyls iron, Pontus the Malodorous castor, Epirus the mares that have won at Olympus? Virgilius Georgica, Book 1, pages 56 to 59. A note, Marcasites, Marchasites, the crystallized form of iron pyrites, what substance Geber designated by the name of Marcasite, firestone, as Porta calls it, Natural Magic, Book 5, Chapter 4, is not known to Dr. Thompson, who suspects it to have been a sulfide of antimony long in common use throughout Asia. End of note. What the chemists, as Geber and others, call the fixed earthly sulfur in iron is nothing else but the homogenic matter of the globe held together by its own humor, hardened by a second humor, with a minute quantity of earth substance not lacking humor is introduced the metallic humor. Hence it is said very incorrectly by many authors that in gold is pure earth, in iron impure. As though natural earth and the globe itself were become in some incomprehensible sense impure. In iron, especially in best iron, is earth in its true and genuine nature. In the other metals is not so much earth as instead of earth and precipitate, condensed and, so to speak, fixed salts, which are efflorescences of the earth, and which also differ in firmness and consistence. In mines they ascend in great volume, with double humor from the exhalation. In mines they ascend in great volume, with double humor from the exhalations. In the subterranean spaces they are consolidated into metallic ores. So too they are produced together, and in virtue of their place and of the surrounding bodies. They acquire in natural matrices their special forms. Of the various bodily constitutions of lodestones, their different substances, colors, and properties we have spoken before. But now, after having declared the cause and origin of metals, the matter of iron, not in the smelted metal, but in the ore from which that is obtained by smelting, has to be examined. Iron, that from its color appears pure, is found in the earth, yet it is not exactly metallic iron, not quite suitable for the different uses of iron. Sometimes it is found covered with a white moss-like substance or with a coating of other stones. Such ore is often seen in the sands of rivers. Such is the ore from Noricum, the region south of the Danube, watered by the Inn, Inus, and the Drave, Drau. Mostly comprised in the modern Austria. Iron ore, nearly pure, is often mined in Ireland. From this the smith, without the labor of the furnace, forges in his shop iron implements. From an ore of liver color is very often obtained in France an iron with bright scales, bracteae. Such iron is made in England without the scales. Carpenters use it instead of chalk. In Sussex, in England, is a rich ore of dark and one of pale ashy color. Both of these ores, when made red hot for some time, or when kept in a moderate fire, take the color of liver. In Sussex also is a dark-colored ore in square masses, with a black rind of harder material. The liver-like ore is often mixed with other stones in various ways, as also with perfect lodestones, which yields the best iron. There is likewise rust-colored ore of a lead color mixed with black, simple black, or black mixed with cobalt. There is also an ore with admixture of pyrites or sterile plumbago. One kind of ore resembles jet, another the precious stone Magneticisque, the stone Smelted, emery, corundum, used by workers in glass for glass cutting, and called by the English emerald stone, and by the Germans Schmiergel or Schmiergel, is of iron, albeit iron is smelted from it with difficulty. It attracts an unmagnetized needle. It is often found in deep silver and iron mines. Thomas Erastus tells of having been informed by a certain learned man of iron ores in color resembling metallic iron, but quite soft and greasy, capable of being molded with the fingers like butter. We have seen ores of about the same kind that were found in England. They resemble Spanish soap. Besides the numberless forms of stony ores, there is a substance like iron rust deposited from ferriferous water. It is got from mud, loam, and from ochre. In England, a good deal of iron is obtained in the furnace from sandstones and clayey stones that appear to contain not so much iron as sand, marl, and other mud. In Aristotle's book De Admirandis Narrationibus we read, "'Tis said that iron of the Sibyls and the Mycenae has quite a peculiar origin, being carried in the gravel of the streams. Some say that after being merely washed, it is smelted in the furnace. Others that it was washed repeatedly, and as often the residue treated with fire in the furnace, together with the stone pyromachus, a stone refractory to the action of fire, which occurs there in great abundance. Thus do many sorts of substances contain in themselves, strikingly and most plentifully, this ferric and telluric element. Many too, and most plentiful in every soil, are the stones and earths, and that various bodies and compounds which contain iron, though not in such abundance, and yield it in the furnace fire, but which are rejected by the metallurgist as not workable with profit. And there are other earths that give evidence of the presence of iron in them. These, being very poor in the metal, are not smelted at all, and not being esteemed, they are not known. The kinds of manufactured iron differ very much from one another. The kinds of manufactured iron differ very much from one another. For one kind has great tenacity, and that is the best. There is a medium kind. Another kind is brittle. That is the worst. Sometimes the iron, on account of the excellence of the ore, is made into steel, as in Noricum at present. From the best iron also, worked over and over again, and purged of all impurities, or plunged red hot into water, is produced what the Greeks call stomoma, and the Latins aces and aciarium, steel, and which is verily called Syrian, Parthian, Norican, Comisi in Spanish. In other places, it takes its name from the water in which it is repeatedly immersed, as at Como in Italy, in Bilbao, in Tariasone in Spain. Steel sells at a far higher price than iron, and on account of its superiority, it is in better accord with the magnet. It is often made from powerful lodestone, and it acquires the magnetic virtue, readily retains it a long time unpaired, and fit for all magnetic experiments. Stomoma, a note, was also the name given to an oxide of copper, which was gradually formed upon the surface of metal. When it was kept in a state of fusion, such oxides of copper were used as external applications, seemingly as exerted. Dr. Thomas's Chemistry, 1830, Volume 1, page 60. End of note. The iron, after it has been smelted in the first furnace, is then treated with various processes in great forges or mills, the metal under mighty blows acquiring toughness and dropping its impurities. When first smelted, it is brittle and by no means perfect. Therefore, here in England, when great cannons are cast, in order that they may be able to withstand the explosive force of the ignited gunpowder, the metal is specifically purged of impurities. While fluid, it is made to pass a second time through a narrow opening, and thus is freed of recremental substances. Smiths, with the use of certain liquids and hammer strokes, toughen the iron laminae, from which are made shields and coats of mail, not penetrable by any musket ball. Iron is made harder by skill in tempering, but skill also makes it softer and as pliant as lead. It is made hard by certain waters, into which it is plunged at white hot, as in Spain. It is made soft again either by fire alone, without hammering, and without the use of water. It is allowed to grow cool, or by being dipped in grease, or it is variously tempered, to serve the purposes of the different arts, by being smeared with special preparations. This art is described by Baptista Porta in Book 13 of Magia Naturalis. Thus is the ferric and telluric substance contained in and extracted from various kinds of stones, ores, and earths. Thus too does it differ in appearance, form, and efficiency. And by various processes of art, it is smelted and purified, and made to serve men's uses in all sorts of trades and in all sorts of tools, and no other body can serve. One kind of iron is suitable for breastplates, another withstands cannonballs, another protects against swords, or the curved blades called scimitars. One kind is used in making swords, another in forging horseshoes. Of iron are made nails, hinges, bolts, saws, keys, bars, doors, folding doors, spades, rods, pitchforks, heckles, hooks, fish spears, pots, tripods, anvils, hammers, wedges, chains, manacles, fetters, hoes, mattocks, sickles, hooks for pruning vines and for cutting rushes, skirpicule, shovels, hoes, weeding hooks, plowshares, forks, pans, ladles, spoons, roasting spits, knives, daggers, swords, axes, Celtic and Gaelic darts, geese, Macedonian pikes, sarisse, lances, spears, anchors, and many nautical implements. Furthermore, bullets, javelins, pikes, corselets, helmets, breastplates, horseshoes, greaves, wire, strings of musical instruments, armchairs, portculisses, bows, catapults, and those pests of humanity, bombs, muskets, cannonballs, and no end of implements unknown to the Latins. I have recounted so many uses in order that the reader may know in how many ways this metal is employed. Its use exceeds that of all other metals 100-fold. It is smelted daily, and there are in every village iron forges. For iron is foremost among metals, and supplies many human needs, and they the most pressing. It is also far more abundant in the earth than the other metals, and it is predominant. Therefore, it is a vain imagination of chemists to deem that nature's purpose is to change all metals to gold, that being brightest, heaviest, strongest, as though she were invulnerable, would change all stones into diamonds, because the diamond surpasses them all in brilliance and in hardness. Iron ore, therefore, as also manufactured iron, is a metal slightly different from the primordial, homogenic, telluric body because of the metallic humor it has imbibed. Yet, not so different, but that in proportion as it is purified, it takes in more and more of the magnetic virtues, and associates itself with the prepotent form, and duly obeys the same.